The Fantastic Four First Steps fell short of Superman in its box office debut, but I wonder which is the worst look, an MCU Fantastic Four movie opening lower than a Superman movie, or a Superman movie beating a Fantastic Four movie by only a small margin? Ponder that as I delve into the numbers here with an update on Fantastic Four's opening weekend. Fantastic Four drew $93.2 million for the weekend ending July 27th, 2025, which set off alarm bells because many expected higher after the movie's blazing $24.4 million Thursday previews. When you add in those previews, you get the total through Sunday of $117.6 million, which you've probably seen reported elsewhere. But again, that's the total through Sunday, not the weekend gross. The weekend is $93.2 million. However, Superman's first domestic weekend was $102.5 million, or 10% better than F4, with a $125 million total at the same point. Let's break down the daily box office to see what happened, starting with F4's studio estimates from Sunday. Now, I show this because the Sunday was Disney's projection, or in simple terms, the made-up number, which is how studio estimates work. It's how the media can report weekend numbers on Sunday mornings before the weekend is even ended. So, Disney has a recent history of being, shall we say, optimistic with their Sunday projections. So they said F4 would drop 16% on Sunday, or less than Superman's 17% drop, which seemed within reason, considering Deadpool and Wolverine was down 13% on the same Sunday last July. But now actual grosses have been reported, and Fantastic Four actually fell 19% on Sunday, steeper than Superman. Not only that, Fantastic Four had a smaller Friday gross and only rose 1% on Saturday versus Superman's 12% Saturday bump. Another thing to note here is that Friday and Saturday were miraculously revised slightly upward to help mask the Sunday shortfall, and perhaps not so coincidentally to claim that highest Thursday preview / Friday opening day combo gross of the year, with its $57.3 million edging out a Minecraft movie's $57.1 million. So there's one victory they'd like to lay claim to with Fantastic Four here. Yet that stretch of a victory just further shows how front-loaded Fantastic Four was. That Thursday / Friday combo of $57.3 million represented 49% of the $117.6 million total through Sunday, which means that Fantastic Four First Steps was even more front-loaded than Thor Love and Thunder, with its Thursday and Friday repping about 48% of its Sunday total, as well as Captain America Brave New World at 46%. I should also note that not only was Fantastic Four more front-loaded than Superman, but also James Gunn's previous movie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, even though the box office through Sunday was roughly the same. Now, compared to 2025 releases, Fantastic Four's official opening day of $32.9 million ranked 4th behind Superman, and its official opening weekend gross of $93.2 million also ranks 4th for the year so far, and hey, that's fitting. And among MCU titles, that opening weekend ranks 20th, not adjusted for ticket price inflation. Now, does this mean that the new Fantastic Four movie is a flameout? To some degree, but it's not like the franchise has this history of long legs. In raw dollars, Fantastic Four First Steps still posted the top grossing opening weekend of the franchise, blowing past Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer's $58.1 million. However, adjusted for ticket price inflation, First Steps falls to 3rd, and the 2005 Fantastic Four rises to the top with nearly $100 million. Now, I think it's fair to say that those Fantastic Four movies, as well as Fan Four Stick from 2015, have tarnished a brand that was never on the A-list, like a Spider-Man, Batman, and Superman. Normies are at least vaguely aware of the Fantastic Four, but the brand is still niche. And more for the hardcore fans, especially given the current state of the MCU. So this is me trying to be positive here, given that the movie just opened. But let's hope the front-loadedness was because of that limited audience appeal inherent to the property, and not anything deeper than that. I do think skipping the origin story and introducing a baby might have been a turnoff to normies. That's the sort of thing you might get away with if everyone is already familiar with the characters and their origins, like with Spider-Man, Batman, and Superman. But it just makes it that much harder to establish a rapport with audiences for what feels like a sequel when we were never introduced in the first place. And for all the talk of family and the marketing, a la Fast and the Furious, Fantastic Four did not appeal to the family audience as much as Superman. According to Intelligence, as reported by Deadline, 17% of F4's audience came from families, lower than the 21% norm for PG-13 superhero movies. Strangely, they didn't say what Superman's family share was, but we can only assume that it was at least 21% based on the context. And this apparent family shortfall makes sense given that Fantastic Four, like I've said, is more niche than Superman. In terms of audience reaction, both Fantastic Four and Superman received A- from CinemaScore, though on ComScore, F4's 72% definite recommend was a tad lower than the 74% that both Superman and Thunderbolts received. Now, worldwide, which combines the aforementioned domestic with international box office, Fantastic Four started at $216.7 million versus Superman's $220 million global launch. Just $3.3 million separating the two. And breaking those totals down, F4 curried a bit more favor internationally than Superman did, as its split was 117.6 domestic and 99.1 international versus Superman's 125 domestic and 95 international. So I'm not seeing how this Fantastic Four opening is some great return to form for Marvel, as the media would have you believe, since it's still in the same ballpark as Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and not that much bigger than Captain America: Brave New World globally. Yes, it's the biggest launch for a new to the MCU franchise since 2019, but that's still not quite enough to say Marvel's back, baby. Let's reserve such praise for when the movie actually shows box office staying power above and beyond the typical MCU flameout. Now, as for Superman, well, it took a hit from losing those high-price premium screen tickets to Fantastic Four. Not to mention, Fantastic Four was a direct blow in terms of genre, tone, and demographics. So, Superman fell 57% to $24.9 million in its third weekend, and here's how its third weekend stacks up against Man of Steel's third weekend. More in terms of dollars, but a steeper drop. Superman's total was $289.5 million as of Sunday, and as I record this on Monday, it will have surpassed Man of Steel's $291 million final gross. However, adjusted for ticket price inflation, Man of Steel is still ahead, and it's probably a long shot for Superman to catch Man of Steel's $405 million adjusted final gross. Compared to The Batman, though, Superman's third weekend was notably smaller, but The Batman still had its premium screens at that time and zero direct competition. I expect Superman to stabilize after this initial hit from Fantastic Four, and it could outgross The Batman's $369 million. As evidence, I present Spider-Man Homecoming from 2017, which had the same July release window as Superman. Look at its third weekend, and it still had more than $80 million left in the tank. This late summer corridor is a great time for established players like Superman to rack up the grosses. Now, before we wrap up this report, there are some worldwide milestones to point out. Jurassic World Rebirth crossed the 700 million mark. Now, it's not getting to $1 billion like its predecessors, but On the strength of its international run, it will be the biggest July release worldwide of the Super Jurassic trio, even if Superman flies past it domestically. How to Train Your Dragon climbed past the 600 million mark, and it just needs 15 million more to claw past How to Train Your Dragon 2 to become the franchise's highest grosser worldwide, not adjusted for ticket price inflation. F1 the movie crossed the 500 million mark, powered by its international appeal. Look at that split. More than 2/3 of its box office from international. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning had a similar split. And is it any coincidence that both are visceral thrill rides led by movie stars who have long track records of international success, that being Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise? Meanwhile, Superman also joined the 500 million club, leaning more heavily on its domestic appeal. Man of Steel made 670 million worldwide back in 2013, not adjusted for ticket price inflation. A final tally like that might be a long shot for Superman, but Superman will at least end up in the 600 million range. And that's a wrap for now. We'll keep tracking the battle between the Fantastic Four and Superman here at Box Office Revival. So be sure to like this video if you liked it. Tell us which movie you think will win in the comments, and subscribe to the channel, especially if you want to support objective reporting on the box office. This has been Brandon Gray, creator of Box Office Mojo. Thank you for watching.